The Alien Council, known for their absolute control over the galaxy, were meeting in their grand chamber, surrounded by floating platforms and holograms of stars. It had been a long day of debates, but now they were discussing humanity. For centuries, humans had been seen as a primitive species, one not worth the time of the galaxy's rulers. Their technology was far behind that of the Council, and their social structures were chaotic and unpredictable. The Council had long dismissed them as insignificant, focusing instead on more advanced civilizations. They thought nothing of the humans, until a strange, urgent message came through the galactic communication system. The message was short but to the point. "We are more than you think." The Council members exchanged curious glances. It was from Earth, a planet in the distant Sol system. The message was odd. No other species had ever sent such a direct communication to the Council, especially one so bold. The Council's leaders dismissed it at first, assuming it was a mistake or a prank. But a few members, particularly a young and ambitious counselor named Voker, urged that they investigate further. "What if they're not as weak as we think?" he suggested, his voice sharp with curiosity. Reluctantly, the Council agreed to send a delegation to Earth, although they were certain it would be nothing more than a waste of time. The Councilors' argument had been persuasive, but in their minds, humanity remained nothing more than a blip on the radar. They sent their ambassadorial ship, sleek and silent, to the blue and green planet, expecting to find primitive humans with no real power to back up their message. As the ship descended toward Earth, the crew could see the vast oceans and continents below. The planet looked peaceful from above, almost idyllic. The captain of the ship, an experienced alien named Rylos, spoke to the crew. "Remember, we are here to observe. These humans have no real value. Let us remind them of their place in the galaxy." The crew nodded in agreement, but Rylos could feel a strange sense of unease creeping over him. It wasn't fear. No, they were far too advanced for that. But something about this mission didn't sit right. When they landed, they were greeted by a group of humans, dressed in ordinary clothes. There was no grand ceremony, no fanfare. The humans were calm, perhaps even too calm, as if they had been expecting the aliens all along. Rylos and his crew stepped off their ship, looking down at the humans. A man in his 40s, wearing a simple suit, stepped forward and extended his hand. "Welcome to Earth," he said with a smile that seemed both welcoming and knowing. Rylos eyed the man suspiciously. The humans, standing in front of the alien delegation, didn't seem scared. In fact, they seemed amused. "We are here to understand your message," Rylos said, his voice colder than usual. "You claim that you are more than we think. But you are a primitive species, no more advanced than the other young races we've encountered. You must prove your worth." The human smiled again. "Of course," he said, "but first, we'd like to show you something." Before the alien delegation could react, a series of large screens around the landing area flickered to life. Images of human achievements began to flash on the screens. Pictures of ancient civilizations, incredible feats of engineering, and scientific discoveries that had shaped the course of history. The humans had no advanced technology compared to the Council, but what they did have was ingenuity. Rylos watched in silence as the humans presented their history, a tapestry of survival, resilience, and creativity. But Rylos was not impressed. "This means nothing," he said, his voice harsh. "Your history is filled with struggles and wars. It only proves that you are weak." The human leader, still calm, nodded. "You're right. Our history is full of mistakes, but it's also full of triumph. We've learned from our mistakes, and we've grown stronger. We've faced extinction, but we didn't give up. Now we are stronger than you realize." There was something about the way the human spoke that made Rylos pause. His words weren't threatening, but they held a quiet confidence that made the counselor feel uneasy. "Let's get to the point," Rylos said, trying to regain control of the situation. "We've come to evaluate your worth. not listen to stories. The human leader nodded and stepped back. He gestured toward a large structure in the distance. We have something to show you. A test, if you will. The aliens followed, still unsure of what they were walking into. When they reached the building, they saw a strange device, unlike anything they had encountered before. It was a simple-looking machine, but there was something undeniably powerful about it. This is our greatest achievement, the human leader said, his voice filled with pride. It's a device that can harness the energy of the Earth itself. It can do things you cannot imagine. Rylos approached cautiously. And what do you expect us to do with this device? The human leader smiled. It's a test. Show us if you can understand it. If you can control it, you'll prove that you are worthy of our respect. Rylos stared at the machine. Something about it felt wrong. There was more to this planet, and to humanity, than he had ever expected. And deep down, he knew that they were about to learn a very valuable lesson. Underestimating humans would be their greatest mistake. As Rylos and the council members began their examination, the humans stood back, watching. The aliens were already starting to realize that this was no ordinary species. They had no idea what they were stepping into. The alien council had been the rulers of the galaxy for centuries, their power unmatched by any species. They looked down on the lesser races, using them when it suited their needs, but never taking them seriously. Humanity, in particular, was seen as an insignificant species, locked in a constant state of chaos and conflict on their primitive planet. The council had only heard rumors of Earth, and they dismissed the human race as no more than a blip in the grand scheme of the galaxy. But then something happened that caught their attention. A mysterious signal came through their communication channels. It was brief, cryptic, and utterly baffling. The message simply read, "We are more than you think." The council members were intrigued, but also dismissive. A species as primitive as humans couldn't possibly pose any real threat, so they quickly brushed it aside. However, a younger counselor named Voker argued that perhaps there was more to humanity than the council had realized. "We can't ignore this," he said. "What if there's something to this message? What if they have developed beyond what we thought?" After some debate, the council reluctantly agreed to send a delegation to Earth to investigate. They chose an experienced ambassador, Captain Rylos, to lead the mission, along with a small crew of experts. The goal was simple: observe and evaluate the humans, determine their capabilities, and report back. Rylos was confident that this would be nothing more than a formality, a routine mission to confirm the obvious. Humans were not a threat. The ambassadorial ship descended through the atmosphere, its sleek design cutting through the air with ease. From space, Earth appeared beautiful and serene, its oceans and continents a swirl of blue and green. As the ship approached the surface, Rylos and his crew gazed out the windows, but there was no sense of excitement or anticipation. They were only here to confirm what they already knew. When the ship landed, they were greeted by a group of humans. They were dressed in simple clothes, and their demeanor was calm, almost unnervingly so. No one seemed to be afraid. No one seemed to be in awe of the advanced alien technology standing before them. Instead, they just stood there, watching with quiet curiosity. Rylos couldn't help but feel a slight twinge of discomfort. These humans were acting different. They didn't seem intimidated at all. A man in his 40s stepped forward and introduced himself as the leader of the human delegation. "Welcome to Earth," he said, his voice calm but steady. There was something strange in his tone, something that made Rylos pause. He expected the humans to be scared, to beg for mercy or assistance, but there was none of that. The leader smiled, but it wasn't a smile of submission. It was a smile that hinted at something more. "We are here to understand your message," Rylos said, his voice cool and commanding. "You claim that you are more than we think, but you are nothing but a primitive species. You have no place in the greater galaxy." The human leader didn't react with anger or fear. Instead, he nodded and replied, "You are right. We have no place in the galaxy, but we have made our own. We've learned to survive on our own terms, and that has made us stronger than you realize. Rylos felt a slight unease. There was something about the human's calmness that made him uneasy. The Council had expected to find a weak, frightened species, but the humans weren't acting like that at all. They were almost proud. "We'll see about that," Rylos said, his tone hardening. "You may be stronger than you think, but we will test you. We'll see if you can truly match the power of the galaxy's greatest civilizations." The human leader's smile never wavered. "Of course," he said. "We are ready to show you." With a wave of his hand, the humans led the aliens toward a large structure in the distance. It was a building made of smooth, reflective materials that seemed almost otherworldly. As they approached, Rylos couldn't help but notice the size of the structure. It was massive, and there was something undeniably impressive about it. The humans didn't seem to notice the aliens' growing unease as they walked through the entrance. Inside, the aliens found a large room, and in the center was a strange device. It looked simple at first glance, but as the aliens examined it closer, they realized that this was no ordinary machine. It hummed with energy, and there was a palpable sense of power in the air. "This is our greatest achievement," the human leader said, his voice filled with pride. "We've harnessed the energy of our planet itself, creating a device capable of controlling and manipulating natural forces. We've spent centuries perfecting it." Rylos stepped forward, his curiosity piqued despite himself. "You've created this by yourselves?" he asked, incredulous. "You are telling me that a primitive species like you has created something so advanced?" The human leader nodded. "We have learned to harness our planet's energy, to use it for peace and progress. But there's more. This device is a test. A challenge to you." "A test?" Rylos asked, raising an eyebrow. "What kind of test?" The human leader smiled again. "Show us if you can control it. Prove that you are truly worthy of the power you claim to possess. If you cannot, then perhaps we have been underestimating ourselves all along." The challenge was clear, and for the first time, Rylos felt a flicker of doubt. Could these humans truly possess a power that the Council had missed? Was it possible that they were more advanced than anyone had imagined? And if they were, what did that mean for the galaxy? As Rylos and his crew examined the device, they realized that this was no simple machine. It was something far more complex, far more dangerous. The humans had been hiding something from the Council all along, and now it was clear. They were not the primitive species the Council had thought them to be. Rylos could feel the tension in the air as the reality of the situation began to sink in. The Council's arrogance had led them to underestimate humanity, and now they were on the verge of making their greatest mistake. What the aliens didn't realize, however, was that the test had just begun. As the tension in the room grew, Captain Rylos and his team tried to maintain control. The humans had issued their challenge, and the Council had no choice but to respond. Rylos stood before the strange machine, his mind racing. It was clear now that humanity was not as primitive as they had thought. This device, the one the humans had so casually presented, was unlike anything the Council had ever seen. It was not just a tool, it was an artifact of unimaginable potential. The humans stood back, watching the alien delegation closely. They didn't seem worried or anxious. In fact, they appeared more confident than ever. Rylos couldn't help but feel an increasing sense of unease. There was no way these humans, who had once been considered a mere curiosity, could possess such a device. He had been sent here to evaluate them, to confirm their weakness. But instead, he was beginning to realize that he was the one being tested. Rylos took a deep breath, trying to focus. The machine in front of him hummed softly, its energy pulsing in the air. He reached out tentatively, his fingers brushing the surface. A jolt of electricity surged through his arm, and he recoiled in shock. The machine wasn't just a source of power. It was alive, in some strange way, responding to the touch of the alien crew. His crew members exchanged uneasy glances, but no one said a word. They had underestimated the humans, and now they were beginning to understand how wrong they had been. "This is no ordinary technology," one of Rylo's officers, Lyra, said quietly, her voice filled with awe. "It's more like a living entity, connected to the very energy of this planet." Rylos nodded grimly. He knew that this wasn't just a test of strength or intellect. This was something deeper. The humans had mastered something that the Council had overlooked: the ability to tap into the very forces of nature, to manipulate the fabric of reality itself. If this was true, then humanity was not just a threat. It was a revolution waiting to happen. "What is it?" Rylos asked the human leader, his voice strained. He had to know more. "How did you create this?" The human leader smiled, his expression unreadable. "We didn't create it. We merely uncovered it. This device is ancient. It has been buried beneath our feet for millennia. Our ancestors knew how to harness its power, but they lost the knowledge over time. It took us centuries to rediscover it. But once we did, we realized something. This device was never meant for war. It was meant to bring balance." "Balance," Rylos repeated, trying to understand. "You mean to say this device could reshape the galaxy?" "Not just the galaxy," the human leader said, his voice steady and sure. "It could reshape everything. It could give us control over the natural forces of the universe. It could heal worlds, end famine, and bring an end to all conflict. But it requires wisdom, restraint, and a deep understanding of the forces we're dealing with." Rylos stared at the machine, his mind reeling. He had heard of powerful technologies before. There were countless artifacts and weapons scattered across the galaxy. But nothing like this. The device was not just a weapon or a tool. It was a force of nature itself, and the humans had mastered it. "It's not just power you're offering, is it?" Rylos asked, his voice low. "It's something much greater. You want to change the very fabric of the universe." The human leader nodded slowly. "We are not the first to wield such power, Captain. Many civilizations before us have risen and fallen, having learned the same lesson. Power is not about domination. It is about understanding. Humanity's greatest strength lies in our ability to learn from our mistakes. We were once a species that destroyed ourselves, but we've come back from that. And now we offer you a choice. We can either use this power for peace, or we can let it be used for destruction." Rylos was silent for a long moment, his mind grappling with the enormity of what the humans were saying. He had come here expecting to crush a weak species, to assert the Council's dominance once again. But what he was hearing now was a challenge, not of might, but of philosophy. The humans were offering something the Council could never offer: a vision of the galaxy built on peace, understanding, and unity. As Rylos stood there, he began to understand that the Council's greatest mistake wasn't just underestimating humanity. It was their arrogance, their belief that they alone held the key to the galaxy's future. They had been blind to the potential of other races, including the humans. And now, standing before this machine, Rylos felt a creeping sense of dread. The Council had never considered peace as a real possibility. They had always believed that power and control were the only ways to shape the galaxy. But the humans were offering something entirely different, something far more dangerous. "We don't need to dominate," the human leader said, as if reading Rylos' thoughts. "We don't need to conquer. We've learned that the greatest strength lies in collaboration, in understanding, in using our abilities to protect and nurture, not to destroy." Rylos glanced at his crew, all of them stunned into silence. The idea of peace had never truly been a consideration for them. The Council's philosophy had always been built on conquest and subjugation. But now, as he stood in the presence of these humans, he began to question everything he had ever believed in. The human leader stepped forward, his gaze unwavering. "We are offering you a choice, Captain. You can either accept our offer and join us in creating a new future, or you can walk away and continue your path of destruction. The decision is yours." Rylos felt a weight settle on his shoulders, one that was heavier than any weapon he had ever carried. For the first time in his life, He wasn't sure what the right choice was. The Council had always believed in their superiority, but now, standing before the humans, he began to realize just how wrong they had been. The challenge was not one of strength or intelligence. It was a test of vision, of what kind of future the galaxy would have. And for the first time, Rylos wasn't sure if the Council's vision was the right one. The decision weighed heavily on him, but he knew one thing for certain. Humanity had just changed the course of history. Rylos stood in the dimly lit room, the hum of the machine still resonating in the air. The human leader's words echoed in his mind. "We are offering you a choice." The decision they were facing was far greater than anything the Council had ever dealt with before. The power that the humans wielded, the wisdom they had cultivated over centuries of struggle and survival, was now before them. It was a choice between continuing the cycle of conquest and control, or stepping into a new future, one built on understanding, cooperation, and peace. But peace was not a simple thing, Rylos knew. It was fragile, something that could be shattered in an instant. The Council had ruled for centuries, using fear and power to maintain order. Peace had never been a priority. It was control, domination, and expansion that had always driven them. To embrace what the humans offered would mean abandoning everything the Council had built. "The Council will never accept this," Rylos said, his voice barely above a whisper. "They will never surrender their power. They will never believe in peace." The human leader nodded, as if he had expected this reaction. "Then you must decide, Captain. You can take this knowledge back to your people, and maybe, just maybe, they will be able to see beyond their fears. Or you can walk away, and the cycle of destruction will continue." Rylos felt a wave of frustration wash over him. He had always believed in the Council's way, their strength, their control, their vision for the galaxy. But now, faced with the reality of humanity's power and wisdom, he was unsure. The Council had never considered that there might be a different way to shape the future. And now, they were being offered the chance to be part of something greater. But could the Council change? Could it truly abandon its old ways and embrace something new? He turned away from the human leader, trying to clear his mind. His crew was still standing silently, each member lost in their own thoughts. They, too, had been raised in the Council's ideology, the belief that only through strength and domination could peace be achieved. But what the humans had shown them was different. It wasn't just power that mattered. It was how that power was used. "We cannot ignore what we've learned," Lyra, one of Rylos' most trusted officers, said quietly. She had been one of the first to notice the strange energy in the machine, to realize that it was more than just a technological marvel. It was something more, a connection to the very heart of the planet, to the forces of nature itself. "If we turn our backs on this, we might never have the chance again. We may never find another species capable of such wisdom." Rylos met her gaze. He could see the doubt in her eyes, the uncertainty that mirrored his own. They were both torn between the Council's old ways and the possibility of a new path. The Council had taught them that power was absolute, that domination was the only way to secure peace. But what if the humans were right? What if peace, true peace, could only be achieved through understanding and cooperation? "What do we do now?" Rylos asked, turning back to the human leader. The human smiled, his expression not one of triumph, but of quiet understanding. "The choice is yours, Captain. You don't need to make it alone. You can take this knowledge back, and you can decide together. But time is running out. The galaxy is changing, and those who resist that change will be left behind." Rylos felt the weight of the decision pressing down on him. It was a choice between the old order and something new, something uncertain. The Council's way had always been clear: conquer, control, and maintain power at all costs. But humanity had shown him that there was another way. A way that didn't require violence, a way that didn't rely on fear. It was a way built on understanding, on shared knowledge, on collaboration. The human leader stepped closer, his voice lowering. "We've seen it before. Empires rise, and empires fall. It's the way of the universe. But those who learn, who adapt, are the ones who survive. The rest, well, they fade away. The choice is yours, Captain. You can decide the future of your people, of the galaxy. Rylos looked down at the machine again. Its energy pulsed softly, like the heartbeat of a living being. For the first time, he realized that the Council's arrogance had blinded them to the truth. They had believed themselves to be invincible, but now, standing before the humans, he understood that true strength was not in control. It was in the willingness to learn, to grow, and to evolve. Rylos turned back to the human leader, his decision finally clear. "We will take this knowledge back to the Council," he said, his voice firm. "We will show them what you've shown us. It will not be easy, but it's a chance we can't ignore." The human leader's smile widened, but it wasn't a smile of victory. It was a smile of hope. "I knew you would understand, Captain. It's not about winning or losing. It's about moving forward together." Rylos nodded, then turned to his crew. They had come here expecting to find a weak, primitive species, but what they had found was something far more dangerous to the Council. An idea. The idea that there was more to life than power, that peace wasn't just a dream, but a reality that could be achieved. It was a threat to the Council's way of life, and it was one they would have to confront. The human leader stepped aside, gesturing toward the machine. "We will leave you to your decision. When you are ready, you know where to find us." With one last look at the humans, Rylos and his crew returned to their ship, the weight of the decision heavy on their shoulders. As the ship ascended into the sky, Rylos stared out the window at the beautiful planet below. He had come to Earth with one belief: that humans were insignificant, weak, and easily dismissed. But now he realized just how wrong he had been. They had shown him a vision of the future, a future that was no longer about conquest or domination, but about cooperation and peace. And that future was something the Council would have to reckon with, whether they wanted to or not. The decision had been made. The Council's worst mistake was about to unfold, and they would learn, too late, that underestimating humanity had been their greatest error. The age of domination was over. The age of humanity had begun. The Council had always believed that the galaxy's order could only be upheld through their iron grip on power. They had shaped the cosmos in their image, ruling with an unwavering certainty that they were the apex of intelligence and strength. For centuries, their rule had been absolute, their laws unchallenged. But now, with the knowledge they had gained on Earth, Rylos and his crew were about to present the Council with a truth they weren't prepared for. As the ambassadorial ship soared through space, heading back to the Council's central hub, Rylos' mind raced. He couldn't stop thinking about the choice the human leader had given him: peace or destruction, control or collaboration. It seemed like a simple enough proposition, but the weight of it was immense. The Council had never once considered that there might be a better way to rule the galaxy. They had always seen themselves as the natural leaders, and they had expected others to follow. But humanity had shown them a different path, one based on shared power, understanding, and wisdom. "What do we tell them, Captain?" Lyra asked, her voice breaking through his thoughts. She had been with him through countless missions, but this one felt different. They were no longer the ones in control. For the first time, they were the ones who had to explain their vulnerability, the ones who had learned something they didn't fully understand. Rylos glanced at his crew, the uncertainty written on their faces. He knew they were all questioning the same thing. Could the Council accept this new way of thinking? Could they abandon centuries of domination and power in favor of peace and collaboration? "We tell them the truth," Rylos said, his voice firm, but tinged with doubt. "We tell them that we've seen something on Earth, something we didn't believe possible. We tell them that humanity has the power to change everything. But I fear they won't listen. The Council will see this as a challenge to their authority. They won't accept that another species has reached a level of understanding that we have only just begun to comprehend." The ship finally docked at the Council station, and as Rylos and his crew disembarked, they were greeted by a sea of familiar faces. The council members, a mix of alien species from all across the galaxy, waited in silence, their eyes cold and calculating. Rylos could feel their gazes on him, waiting for his report. He could almost hear the unspoken question in the air. Had he succeeded? Had he brought them the knowledge they had sent him for? He stepped forward, his heart pounding. He could feel the weight of the decision pressing down on him, but there was no turning back now. "The mission has been completed," Rylos said, his voice echoing in the vast hall. "We have made contact with the humans, and what we've learned will change everything." The council's leader, an imposing figure named Xaren, stepped forward, his eyes narrowing. "We have been waiting for this report, Captain. Tell us, have the humans been defeated? Are they ready to fall in line, as we predicted?" Rylos shook his head slowly. "No, the humans are not defeated. They are not a species to be conquered. What we learned on Earth is something far greater than any of us could have imagined. They have mastered a power, an energy that binds the very fabric of the universe. They have unlocked the secrets of nature itself." A murmur spread through the room as the council members exchanged glances. The words power and energy were not new to them, but this was different. This was something they didn't understand. Rylos could see the flicker of doubt in their eyes, but it was quickly replaced by the council's trademark arrogance. "And what of this power?" Xaren asked, his voice filled with a cold sneer. "Do you propose we allow these humans to challenge us? We have ruled the galaxy for centuries, Captain. We will not be threatened by some primitive species." Rylos stood tall, the weight of his newfound knowledge pushing him to speak the truth. "You don't understand. The humans don't want to challenge us. They don't want power. They want peace. They want to work with us, not against us." The room fell silent, and for a moment, Rylos wondered if the council had heard him at all. He saw the skepticism in their eyes, the doubt that had settled in their minds. They were unwilling to accept that something as simple as peace could be a viable solution. "They have shown us their technology," Rylos continued, his voice unwavering. "But it's not just technology. It's an understanding of the universe itself, of the forces that govern life and energy. They have learned how to harness these forces, not for domination, but for healing, for balance." Xaren scoffed. "Healing, balance, those are words for weaklings. The strong dominate, the strong rule." Rylos felt his frustration rising. "That's the problem. Xaren, you've never understood what true strength is. True strength isn't about domination. It's about understanding. The humans have learned to coexist with nature, to use its power for the betterment of all life. They're not asking us to follow them. They're asking us to join them. They're asking us to evolve." A tense silence filled the room. Rylos could feel the weight of the council's collective gaze on him. He had challenged everything they had ever believed in, and he knew the consequences of that. The council would not easily accept this new vision, but in his heart, he knew that it was the only way forward. Xaren's eyes narrowed, and he took a step forward. "You are suggesting that we abandon everything we have built, that we abandon the very foundation of our power." "I am suggesting that we evolve," Rylos said, his voice steady. "We've been given a choice. We can either continue down the path of destruction, or we can join humanity and create something greater than we've ever imagined. The decision is yours." The room was heavy with silence. The council members exchanged glances, but no one spoke. Rylos could see the internal struggle unfolding within each of them. The idea of peace, of sharing power, was foreign to them. They had spent centuries building their empire on the belief that only through control could order be maintained. But now, they were being asked to consider something different. "Leave us," Xaren finally said, his voice cold. "We will deliberate. You have made your case, Captain. But understand this, there are many among us who will not accept such an idea." Rylos nodded and turned to leave. As he stepped out of the council chamber, he knew that the battle was far from over. The Council would resist this new way of thinking. They would fight to maintain their dominance, to hold on to the power they had accumulated. But for the first time, Rylos was not sure if their way was the right one. The decision had been made. Humanity had offered them a choice. The Council's worst mistake would not be in underestimating humanity. It would be in refusing to evolve.